All right, welcome to another edition of Couch Caucus. This week is crossover week, and technically today is crossover day. So, as we speak, I believe the House is still in session over at the Capitol. We did contemplate going over there and crashing the party, but it would be kind of hard to broadcast from the balcony without, getting some really dirty looks. So, here we are back on our sofas. My name is Amanda Bachman, and I'm here with my co host, Bree Oatman, and her dog, Opal, and we're going to go over some of what's been happening this week. And then we've also got events happening on Saturday to talk about too. So, Bree, what do you want to start with? There's a lot to work with.
I'm actually real quickly. I'm wondering if we need to have some snacks sent over to our friends supporting the supporting the legislator. We should probably check in with Brooke and Ethan a little bit and Cully, make sure they're okay and they need food or something. And
yeah,
at least we could deliver some food.
Yeah, anyone here still at the house and you need anything, feel free to text us. And when we're done, we'll figure out a way to make your lives maybe slightly better.
Yes. Well, I think actually it'd be really helpful to just quickly explain what crossover is. So what is crossover? What is this day all about?
Yeah, so crossover day is when bills have to make it out of their house of origin in order to keep going in the process. So we've been talking about, like House bills, Senate bills, they originate on one side or the other of the legislature. They go to their committees, and then if they make it out of committee, they go to the floor, and then they have to make it off of the floor and get sent over to the other side. So today is the day that all of the House bills the House has to make a decision up or down and either pass them over to the Senate side so that the Senate can then, do their part and deal with them, or the House, has to kill them, send them to the 41st day or whatever. So anything that's still on their agenda, like they have to deal with today. Same deal with the Senate. Usually what happens is the Senate has fewer bills than the House, so the Senate tends to get out sort of in a reasonable amount of time, and the House is still working.
So that explains why they're there till midnight tonight, because otherwise It's like, why would they go on so long? Okay, so that means we've got a lot to kind of rehash, and we don't actually really know what's still going to be alive or not, right? Until basically till tomorrow, I'm guessing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it would be a lot to try to stream this and like have the House audio playing at the same time to see even what bill that they're on. But yeah, like so.
And I think I would run out of stress cookies by that point. I am grateful that it's Girl Scout cookie season right now, though, by the way.
Yeah, if anybody needs a Girl Scout cookie hookup, we know like 5. So we can point you in the right direction. But yeah, the House, and that's the thing too, is, all of the floor debate around bills and all that fun stuff, like the House bill on the medical marijuana thing, I think that was House Bill 1100. I think that took up almost an hour of floor time earlier today when they gavelled in. So if you think about some of these bills that are what they call talkers, that also sort of, keeps things going and, keeps them there longer. And, one thing that I noticed with the legislature is that committees I feel like sometimes they don't necessarily budget their time very well because they have to give every bill a hearing. But if you'll notice, like early in session, they will sometimes like keep punting bills to like the next calendar day or the next day that the committee's meeting. And so eventually you get to crossover week, everything piles up and it has to get out. And so that makes for long days.
Yeah, I mean, and that actually made me think of something that I really wanted to make sure we brought up tonight. And that's just, I mean, okay, we'll get into some of our like major venting, ranty kind of like kind of stuff in just a minute. But I started thinking about the fact like it took an hour for them to debate whether or not they should extend the deadline on a voter initiated measure that had overwhelming support from the voters and very clearly stated that it needed to be implemented by this summer. And they wasted an hour and then voted to extend that deadline, right? So basically it's like one more time that the South Dakota legislature, which is dominated by the South Dakota Republican Party, basically says, the voters can't be trusted to make good decisions, and we're just going to disregard everything you just voted on at the polls. This is not the first time this has happened. So, now they're delaying this, and really they're delaying it, and they claim they're doing it so they get it all right and everything's all on the up and up. But really, hey, Helena, they're really delaying it because they're against marijuana and they don't give a shit what we voted on. And so they're just like every little thing they're trying to keep doing this. But what really makes me mad about this is that is an hour that could have been given to other bills that actually need floor time in order for us to address all of the urgent needs in our state in terms of infrastructure and healthcare and education and all of the other things that they're elected to do that they're not doing because they spend so much time in committee arguing about people's private lives, transgender youth, like you name it. Like there's all of these bills that they constantly are putting forward that basically are highly invasive into people's personal lives and really part of a very ideological conservative kind of social agenda that they're hate bills for the most part in terms of like the anti-transgender stuff, full stop. It's a hate bill. A transgender girl is a girl. Okay. That's just the way, that's the end of the tweet. That's my tweet.
Yeah. Yeah. So that bill is 1217 or something. But yeah,
17.
What was that? 1117?
1217.
1217. Okay. It's like I have these numbers in my head and there's always like, did I do the flashcard right? And it turns out I did. So House Bill 1217, that one passed the House. So it is going to go over to Senate committee. Not sure what committee it's been assigned to, or I don't think it's on the calendar quite yet, but we're running out of days in session. So it's going to be dealt with probably next week. So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, it's, under the guise of protecting girls in sports, and this pervasive nationwide myth that is copy pasted out of conservative think tank meetings where they think that there are boys who are saying that they are girls in order to compete in girls sports and I don't know win. The logic does not even, it doesn't make sense. It's not a thing that happens. It's not a thing that happens in South Dakota. If it did happen in South Dakota, the South Dakota High School Sports Association would be the entity that would be dealing with those questions. And it's just like, I honestly think these people who are so anti-trans, I think they're afraid of encountering a trans person in their life, either in their personal life, in their professional life, on a date. They are absolutely terrified that, I don't know, something's just not going to match up and they are not going to know what to do with themselves. And it's like, that's something that they need to work on, like internally or maybe with a therapist instead of legislating.
Well, and in reality, they have probably encountered a transgender individual and they just don't know, because in their head, they have the stereotype of what they would look like. And they have no idea that they probably peed in a stall next to somebody already that was in that stall, because they also need to poop and pee just like everybody else. And, or were out at a meeting in public, whatever, so there's a whole lot with this bill that really just kind of is problematic. First of all, just the whole anti-transgender kind of agenda, and that this is one of many bills that have been introduced over the last 6 years in the South Dakota legislature. And the other piece of this in terms of time wasted is that, isn't it true that like every bill that gets put on the list basically has to be heard in some form? So if you imagine all of these bills that get introduced, and there's been several of these types of bills, they all have to have airtime. They all require mental energy and time by elected officials to decide what to do with it. And that is time that could again be used for things that actually benefit all South Dakotans, instead of targeting and singling out one group of people, and in particular singling out children and youth. I mean, that's the part that just like really, really just frustrates me the most. But like, let's talk about gender stereotypes, right? And if you really cared about protecting the rights of, of fairness of girls in sports, you'd be worrying about all these other issues and policies that, you know, create barriers to access to athletics, whether it's cost or, you know, academic requirements, or even just the type of options that are available for girls for sports in many communities where it's so rural. Or I think about when my now 13-year-old used to wrestle, and in some clubs they wouldn't let her wrestle. There weren't many girls wrestling, and they wouldn't let her wrestle a boy in her weight class because God forbid she beat the boy and bruise his ego. You know, like those kind. And I'm just going to say this right now, my daughter could probably beat every male member of the House or Senate in an arm wrestling match. No joke. I mean, seriously, and she'd probably outclass almost every girl in any sport other than maybe running, because of the way she is built as a person in terms of her muscle mass and everything else. So these ideas and these myths about, you know, body mass and power and all that and this unfairness, it is a scientific, it's a myth. It's all based on really bad science. Like that bill had all of these references to supposedly peer-reviewed journals that, I mean, I don't even have the time to like go through all of that. And I'm just going to put this out there too. I am turning 46 in about a month. Okay. It's like a few days on Monday, I start my, you know, my month-long birthday countdown. 2 years ago, I outran a whole gaggle of 20-something men who were doing their like required 2-mile run for the Army. And I just decided to do it for shits and giggles with my husband, and I outran those men. And I am not like a hardcore athlete by any means. So let's just stop talking about these, like assuming that men are a certain way, women are a certain way, and this whole idea of athleticism and power, because it's all sexist and it's transphobic. I mean, because that's the other piece of this too, is what this leads to then is this whole idea of what it means to be feminine or masculine. And what are they going to do next? Regulate, you know, oh, well, this girl has too high of a testosterone level, and so that's unfair as a track athlete. So you have to take suppression drugs in order to compete, or you can't compete. And that is actually what's happening now, is that there are athletes across the world where this is what they're facing because of this whole kind of crazy thing we have about, you know, gender and sex and everything else, and people apparently sleeping through biology class or not having taken it at all, and clearly need to have some more education. So I'm going to get off my little soapbox now.
Yeah, no, that bill is, I sincerely hope that it manages to get killed in Senate committee. And District 24 wise, I, you know, looked at the screenshot of the vote board that was posted after the vote happened. And in District 24, our representatives split their votes. So Wisegraham voted against the bill, which was good. We were happy about that. Will Mortensen voted for the bill. And that's totally going to be a question I ask on Saturday at the District 24 Cracker Barrel in Highmore. That's my SIG to plug that. But there is actually going to be a live Cracker Barrel for District 24 this weekend. I know we've had the radio ones previously, but Highmore always hosts one. It's going to be in the school gym so that they can socially distance. I will, of course, be wearing a mask. And I'm totally going to take that opportunity to live tweet it. And what's interesting about the Highmore Cracker Barrel is usually when we have, you know, the in-town live ones, we do tend to get more of the questions on these social issue bills when we're here in Pierre. Then you go out to Highmore and all the questions are about like wind energy and infrastructure and bridges, and like nothing, crickets about about the social issues. But since this vote just happened and our representatives split their vote, you know, that's if I get a chance to submit questions, like that's going to be one of my questions for them. Like, you know, Will Mortensen, why did you vote for, you know, House Bill 1217? Like what's going on here, dude? So yeah, totally curious to see what he says about that, if we even get questions like that in, because he was also the representative who filed the articles of impeachment for Attorney General Jason Brownsburg. So it's been like a pretty big week happening here in South Dakota.
Yeah, I imagine there'll be a whole lot of questions kind of focused on what just happened with our AG. And then, so I would also be going to the Cracker Barrel if there wasn't also going to be protests happening all over the state this Saturday in solidarity with transgender people in South Dakota and in opposition to these bills, in particular the remaining bill, which is House Bill 1217. So email your senators, call them, and let them know how you feel about this. And also please show up to one of these protests. So I will actually find the Facebook page and put that in the, I think, Amanda, you have to do that because I'm not the host tonight.
Oh,
I don't have those powers. So anyway,
I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, so the Transformation Project is organizing this, and they have events happening across the state in multiple communities. And so we will put the link to their page in the chat, in the comments, so that you can see where the nearest one is going to be to you. And yes, please show up and show your support for transgender people in South Dakota. Send money to the Transformation Project to support them, or the South Dakota ACLU, because they're the ones that are going to be legally advocating for against these bills if the bills are passed. And that's who you really, they're going to be the ones filing the lawsuits and all of that kind of stuff. So that's definitely where you should send some financial support to as an ally. Yeah, this is this is going to end up being a kind of a big weekend. So, and if you are watching from out of South Dakota, because I know I've got like a little bit of a fan club with my mom and my auntie, our Attorney General was on his cell phone, apparently checking blogs and news updates while driving home from a Republican fundraiser, and went onto the shoulder, there is a rumble strip, and killed a man. And we just this week, that was in September, and this week we just finally got the final, the attorney kind of prosecutor saying what they felt was the ultimate result of this, and that he is being charged with 3 misdemeanors. He has yet to step down. He was not put on administrative leave. The governor just finally said that he should step down, because also the videos of his interviews with the detectives was released, which is amazing because that is not something that typically happens. And he claimed he hit a deer. So let me back up. He hit this man, and then his car obviously was not operable, walked to a buddy's house who is a deputy sheriff, borrowed the sheriff's car, drove 70 miles home to Pierre, then called 911 and reported that he hit a deer. Yeah. So, and then we learned things like this, the man who died, his glasses were in Attorney General, the Attorney General, should we mispronounce his name or say it correctly?
So it's pronounced Rounsburg, but
it's
during the press conference, some people said Ravensburg, which is
Ravensburg because of the way it's spelled. So anyway, the victim's glasses were in the car. I mean, clearly he had to have seen that it wasn't a deer that he hit, and he totally lied. And that's what's just really egregious about all of this. Like, he totally lied, tried to cover it up. They claim they never saw the body, that they went around and looked with flashlights. There's like cell phone. This is like a total sidebar. If you think that a microchip is going to go into a vaccine and then they're going to be able to track you, and you have a cell phone, just yeah. Shut the F up. You better get rid of that smartphone, because holy cow, what they can get forensically with the cell phone is amazing. So they actually were able to see that they walked around the body in vicinity with it with their cell, based on the cell phone kind of tracking your movement. And then knowing what he was doing on his phone, how fast he was going, all of that information. And so anyway, it's just kind of a big shit show in South Dakota, but it's nothing new, because this is kind of the state of cronyism, corruption, good old boys network. So it's just this is just another day. Hi from SD.
Yeah. Well, and so No made her statement on Monday. I believe so tapes from 2 of the interviews with Jason Rounsburg were released as YouTube videos on Tuesday. I then watched them. Was it I'm running today's only Thursday. I'm running it what day is it? So Tuesday night, my other couch caucus, my session roommates, we all we sat up and watched the interviews together. And I'm glad that we did, because now they are no longer posted online due to a judge's order. So essentially, Brownsburg finally realized that he'd like said too much to the cops, or I don't know if he's got counsel or anything. But one of the things that I noticed from watching the videos is he just offered up all sorts of information, which is not a thing that you want to do when you're at a like voluntary interview with the police. Like, don't say anything more than you have to. I'm not even
clear
a
that
lawyer.
he figured he wasn't going to get in trouble, right?
Yeah, like it was like, oh man. So I'm very glad that I watched the source document like while it was available, because it was truly astounding. Like it was just stunning. It was amazing that we even got to see that. I
Hopefully
totally
some
want to.
people downloaded it.
Oh, I'm sure it's floating around somewhere, because it was on YouTube for Tuesday, Wednesday, and then just probably until about like 5 o'clock ish today. So now if you go to where the links were, it says the video is private, so you can't see them anymore. But I know essentially that a lot of the local media outlets like the Argus and Rapid City Journal had extensive articles about the videos, including a lot of essentially transcripts. So sorry, Jason, the information's out there. We're not going to forget.
And I'm really hoping the family is able to, actually get some justice in a civil court, because the criminal charges were really ridiculous. I mean, I saw a tweet on, I think it was on yesterday, or maybe it was Tuesday. Basically, it was somebody who, was like, when I was 18, I got caught with pot and paraphernalia, and I actually had to spend some time in like a couple days in jail, like as a teenager. Meanwhile, Attorney General of South Dakota kind of deal, so there's just some real, this is just, and the other piece that I, of course, again, South Dakota, why am I not surprised? Not only was he buddies with the deputy sheriff who helped him out, so let's like talk about that, like what's going to happen to that guy in terms of like, he really just didn't do his job. But the prosecutor or the state's attorney in Hyde County was a classmate of Brownsburg's. Like, I just saw that. Like, they knew each other too, and they were class. I mean, I know it's like a small town state. Like, it's hard. You're like 1 degree away from knowing everybody, even if you're not from here. Like, neither of us are originally from here. We're now like, I'm probably like 5 degrees connected to everybody in South Dakota at this point. And I've been here 6 years. But he went to school with her. Like, you'd think that someone would say, okay, can we at least try to find an attorney to investigate this who has less personal connection to the person who is being investigated. Like, it's really sus. And I just want to like eject him off the ship right now.
Oh man, it just, and the thing too, like, you're talking about the cell phone tracking of like, they were essentially walking like right next to the, right where the body was. And the investigators in the second interview, they told Jason that during the accident reconstruction, they walked that road at night, both sides of the road, with the flashlight that Joe Beaver, the victim, was carrying at the time of his death. That flashlight was found the next morning in the ditch, still on. It's just like, again, so glad that we listened to those tapes when we had a chance, like when they were posted, because the information there and all of that, and they're like, it was a misdemeanor. Like, it just,
and I'll just say it was a dark night. I've driven that stretch of roads. I can't tell you how many times now at night because of having to go to doctor appointments for my daughter in Minnesota. And there is enough ambient light that unless it was like pea soup fog and some crazy like blizzard conditions, there is no way you would not see that. It's just impossible. Like, it's just the whole thing is just, it's just bullshit piled higher and deeper. It's like, this is just so, and the fact that he was so open in the interviews, it's like he clearly just thought, his story was wrapped up nice and tight, and he was totally going to get away with it, and and that's the part that just really is horrible. not only because he's a person in like our highest law enforcement person in office in South Dakota, who also like, let's circle this back to marijuana again and the bills. So our governor basically authorized 2 public employees, one a sheriff and one a state patrol person, to sue the citizens of South Dakota who voted to legalize pot, to basically say that we can't legalize pot. I mean, that's basically what the governor was doing because she's against it, even though there are rumors that she probably has smoked pot in her past as a teenager or whatever. So yeah. And so then our attorney general, that office then has to represent the state in that lawsuit. But then aren't they also supposed to represent the people? So, I mean, the conflict of interests that keep coming up over and over and over again with members, elected officials, and all of the stuff in this state are just like, I mean, we could literally be in a Coen Brothers movie. It's like, and this is, so just in case people have forgotten who live here or who are not from South Dakota, a couple years ago, we actually had a voter initiative about corruption in our government to have more oversight and transparency and to make sure that this shit didn't keep happening. And guess what the legislature did? They did not enact that voter initiative. So it is just kind of like, but then every election, what do voters do? They go and vote for the same people over and over again, even though they do all of this garbage every year. And the main reason they do that is because there's like an R after somebody's name and they just kind of go down and they vote and they don't think about who they're voting for, what that person's actual position is on issues and how it impacts them every day in their life. And I can tell you right now, as a parent of a gender nonconforming child, every day during legislative session for the last 6 years that I've lived in this state, I am stressed out. I am emotionally kind of a train wreck and worried about the safety of my kid. So I'm just going to put that out there right now. Like when the legislatures, and I wrote Will Mortensen in particular about this, that his vote directly impacted, I mean, because he filed the impeachment papers against Ravnsborg and basically said a constituent of mine died. Right? Mm-hmm. Somebody in my district died. And so I feel like I have to do this. Well, you voted for a bill, Will, Mort, put this in your Mort blog or whatever it is you're calling it. You voted for a bill that directly attacks children in your district. Just gonna take a deep breath as a mom right now. Mama Bear is like, okay.
Yeah, right. And like, and I there have been some, Facebook, threads and posts and conversations that I've read, and some of which I've, kind of bopped into, because here's another thing, white Democrats of South Dakota, there are issues that we are past time where we need to be concerned about politeness as our first worry. There are white Democrats and there are white people in this state, and there are straight, white people in this state who think that trans rights are a difference of opinion. They are not a difference of opinion. I don't know how much I can stress that when an issue comes down to somebody's humanity, it's no longer a difference of opinion. So entirely miss me with your like, oh, they're a good person, they're such a good Christian, whatever else nonsense. And then in the next breath, they say that trans kids don't deserve the same opportunities as kids, that trans kids don't just get to be kids in school, play sports, do activities, whatever. Entirely miss me with that bullshit.
Yeah. And let's talk about some other things related to that, because clearly, like it's not the only issue where they're like, we need to kind of check people's white privilege. What? Oh, here you go. couch caucus with children and pets.
Yep.
So let's and this is the thing, like, okay, so let's kind of circle this back to other issues that, are really important to many citizens in South Dakota, in addition to the trans rights. So this basically means, like, if we're going to check our privileges as white Democrats in particular, because that's kind of our audience or echo chamber here, gay rights, like gay marriage, full stop. Everybody has a right to get married to whoever the hell they want to get married to. That's just the way it should be. Women should have access to adequate, safe health care, full stop, without having to be emotionally abused with a litany of surveys and questions and inquisitions about whether or not they know if they're making the right decision. Like, I'm sick and tired of being patronized by healthcare providers when it's not even for something that's like, oh my God, my uterus and what's going on down there. Like, I'm just so sick of it. And so, I keep thinking about what would happen if I'm going to just kind of put myself out there personally. Again, almost 46. I have a child who's 3. That was a big surprise and an awesome, wonderful surprise. But right now, if I thought I was pregnant, like, holy shit, I would be in a panic, and I would be thinking about whether or not I was seriously going to keep this pregnancy or not. And I'm going to be honest about that, because it just stresses me out so much to be thinking about that, in terms of the fact that I can still reproduce, and I am just too old to do that at this point in my life. And even with like all of the other things I can do to prevent that from happening, things happen, shit happens. And so I want to know that I have access to whatever healthcare I need to be able to be a full human being myself. Let's talk about that full humanity, right? Like, this is relational. Like, I'm not just a vessel to pop out other human beings. Like, that is not what women are on this planet for. So, that's that little soapbox about that. Now let's talk about Indigenous rights in our state and other legislation that has been totally shot down by our legislators because of, and I'm just going to say it's racism. Like, if you can't support the tribal communities in our state actually getting to implement their own school systems that aren't beholden to all of the other kind of institutional racist garbage that comes with our public school system, then that's a racist vote. That's just it. So I am really happy that the bill related to actually creating a liaison office related to missing and murdered Indigenous women passed in the House. Like, yes, like that is like, okay, thank you. Right. And I was totally ready. I was like, if that one doesn't pass, I'm going to go look and see how many of those effers were repeatedly this summer posting about sex trafficking and children, like that whole thing during Black Lives Matter. I was going to go see how many of them were posting about that and then voted no on this and be like, oh, you sons of bitches. Like, just seriously. And we have some great comments coming into the comments. So yeah. I'm actually going to let Amanda field that.
Well, and I was going to say too, on the line with the missing murdered Indigenous women bill, Kristi Noem, every press conference, even the one this morning at 10:30, every press conference, she somehow finds a way to circle back to being mad about Biden canceling Keystone XL. The KXL pipeline coming through South Dakota would have meant more missing, murdered Indigenous women. It would have meant more violence for our Indigenous communities. And the fact that she is so overly sad about KXL being killed, really, that's a net positive for our state. Killing KXL is good for South Dakota, and she needs to really, really get beyond that. And let's see. So yeah. And that's the thing, is like all those issues are tied together, and the Republicans in the state will do a few things. They'll pass that MMIW bill out of the House. Fingers crossed it makes it through the Senate, but they won't seriously look at the root cause of those issues, and they won't look at the other things that are connected to those issues. So they'll do that one because it's got the good social media presence and maybe the good graphics, but they won't actually interrogate within themselves, all the other connections. And yeah, just so much rage. So let's see. Yes, comments.
working really hard on not having some rage strokes.
Right. I mean, we
just like vein is gonna like start like permanently popping out on my temples.
I make, well, our friend, another Amanda, we joke that I make angry basset noises. If you've ever had a basset hound, they just kind of make these like, yeah, I do the angry basset noises. But yeah, Remy and Alana, yeah, other things that happened this week, Governor Noem signed a bunch of bills into law. One of them was the Born Alive bill, which I'm just waiting for that one to end up being like misapplied and hurting a family who's, losing a very wanted pregnancy. That bill essentially says that any baby born alive, has to be given life-saving care regardless sort of the circumstances. That was a bad bill. It was an invasive bill. It was another bill that, essentially tells people like, we don't trust your reproductive decisions. We don't trust your decision making. And then, yeah, once you pop that kid out, like, we're not going to help it a damn bit. So, yeah. Also, like, the legislators here, the Republican ones, are playing conservative special interest group bingo with their bills, because every bill gets a hearing. They know that they can check off their NRA talking points, their pro-life talking points, their anti-immigrant talking points, their anti-LGBTQ talking points, like all of those things. It's like, I've been here long enough that I can see the game that's being played, and it's immensely frustrating.
Yeah, I'm not even sure what the status is now of all the other reproductive rights bills that are out there, which ones have died or not. But yeah, it was kind of this like, there was this, and this is, thanks Amanda for sharing that. I don't know where it went. It just disappeared. That was Elena's comment. So,
because it's too long for the comment window that we have. I'm going to try to find it on Facebook
bummer.
so I can see what the whole thing is.
Comments. But yeah, so they had this whole package of like, I'm just going to call it a shit sandwich of legislation, and it's also like very contradictory. So there's this Born Alive bill, which basically also in South Dakota, you legally can't get an abortion past week 13. So it's like legislation for something that never happens anyway. Like, and we talked about this last week.
Yep.
It's just not a thing. Women aren't like at week 36 suddenly deciding, I just don't want to be pregnant anymore. I'm just going to go get an abortion. Like, it just doesn't happen. Like, it doesn't happen. Okay, so if this is a situation, then seriously, there's like medical stuff going on, and it just needs to be between the medical provider and the patient. Like, this is nobody's business. And to force then for them to do all these medical interventions is, I mean, the medical trauma with this is like, just to go through that process, the medical trauma has got to be, I'm just like, I'm imagining just some of the trauma, a little bit of the trauma I had giving birth to a child that had birth defects that I didn't know about until she was born. And then thinking about this, right? Like the degree of medical trauma you're going through at that point is tremendous. And then to say, by law, we have to do all these things, even if it's against your wishes, right? Like, if you had a plan, like you have an end of life plan, right? It's that all of that is just so horrible and anti-life, just like, just all of it. It's yeah. And then, okay, yeah. So let's talk about this one.
Yeah. So this was a bill that was, I believe, sponsored by Representative Erin Healy, and it would have allowed pregnant minors to essentially take control of their prenatal care. Because as it stands now, and I remember reading Representative Healy's post about this last night after it was defeated, but essentially as it stands now, if you are a minor and you are pregnant, your parents have to consent to the medical care that you're receiving. And then once you have your child, you're then making the medical decisions for your kid. And so, some of the things that Erin brought up was that, in cases where the parents are not present or supportive of the pregnancy, or, maybe nobody's happy, if their teenager gets pregnant, but at least, you can be supportive in wanting them to have a healthy pregnancy. But you have situations where you've got minors, giving birth, and they can't have an epidural, or, other care because their parent is not there to consent to it. And it was a close vote in committee. I want to say it was like a 9-5 or something. It wasn't. I mean, it was
7 or 7-6.
Yeah,
it was.
It was very, very close. And those kinds of close votes are, that would be one that would be worth smoking out on the House floor instead of the bullshit that they smoked out earlier in the year. But yeah, things like that where you say that you want to be you're a pro-life state, you're a pro-family state, but instead of being sort of supportive of the person who is pregnant, you're instead trying to legislate, parent-child relationships between, this pregnant, teen and their parents. And it's just very weird and very misguided. And the South Dakota legislature needs to let go of this fantasy that they can somehow create this 1950s Leave It to Beaver utopia in South Dakota that never existed in America anyway. Like, it just,
yeah, I mean, people were still getting pregnant outside of marriage. People were still getting abortions. Transgender people existed. Gay people existed. It just wasn't as safe to be honest about who you are. And so people kept it under wraps, and plenty of people still keep it under wraps. And because of all of this, there's still this like regular kind of current of hate and discrimination in this state where people live their entire lives not being safe, being who they are and being able to express that. And, people need to take a moment to imagine what that would be like if you lived every day feeling like you couldn't fully be who you are because you were afraid of how you would be treated or what would happen to you. You'd be afraid of losing your home or afraid of losing your job and, all of that, like that being loved, like all of that is just so, that's the part to me that just really gets me really, really pissed off when this legislation comes up and other bills that are super discriminatory, because it's completely lacking in any kind of empathy, any kind of like sense of like care and concern for humanity. And it's always going to be coming from people who claim to also be, like upstanding Christians. And I kind of want to just be like, well, like if we're all children of God, then shouldn't you be legislating in a way that affirms all of us in that way versus doing what you're doing? I mean, that's the part of it that also just kind of like is super frustrating for me. Okay, we are at 42 minutes, and I just want to make sure we had a list of things we wanted to make sure we talked about. So let's kind of like regroup. We have Cracker Barrels coming up this weekend. We should probably put a link into like whoever is at like the League of Women Voters or other groups that like list all of the Cracker Barrels for the state.
Yeah, let me see if I can find I know the ACLU had a list.
And the ACLU has something going on this Saturday as well at 10. I think they started it's like a podcast, I think, with, is it Candy Brings Plenty that's doing that? There's a podcast that they're starting to do and talking about Indigenous rights and issues in South Dakota. And so that is happening at 10 on Saturday. There's also the transgender rights rallies that are happening across the state. So please make sure that you're finding out if there's one near you, figuring out if you can get to one, even if it's within a 2-hour drive. Because again, let's talk about privilege. If you have a car and you can afford a gas tank to fill your gas tank and get somewhere within 2 hours, you should show up. Honestly, you need to show up. And if you can't do that, then give money as a way of supporting and showing up and repost about what's happening. I mean, that's the other thing, like, if you're going to, part of being an ally is taking some risks in terms of your own kind of personal power and credibility or whatever you want to call it. And so if it feels risky to you to post something on Facebook, like about all transgender people belong in South Dakota, and you're a white straight person, you should probably post it and live with the consequences of that potential risk, whether it's your family members getting mad at you or whatever that fear is, whatever, like, you just need to take that risk and you need to step up and do the right thing, because people's lives are at stake. That's the bottom line. People's lives are at stake with these bills. And if you don't speak out, you're basically condoning this behavior. You're condoning this legislation. You're basically sending the message that this is all okay. And it's not.
Yeah. I definitely second the speaking out about the trans rights, because that is the thing that I noticed in South Dakota is South Dakotans are nice to each other. They're polite. They don't want to, there's this real culture of you don't want to have conflict. And I don't care if you have known somebody since birth. If they don't believe that trans people are people and deserving of human rights and equality, you need to work on that person and or rethink that friendship. You cannot be an ally and let something like that go unchecked in your social circle. Your friend probably isn't going to listen to me, carpetbagger from Pennsylvania, but they're going to listen to you, the seventh generation South Dakotan or whatever. Like that's how we make change, and that's how we make this state, better for all of its residents, not just the, cishet white ones. I put the links in the chat to the ACLU list of Cracker Barrels. They don't have all of them. The Highmore Cracker Barrel I found on the that second link that I posted, the Association of School Boards or something. It's very weird. The Highmore one, I always feel like I have to know some sort of secret password to even find out that it's happening. So, but yeah, and if I could be two places at once this weekend, I would both, teleport from Highmore and to the Capitol steps in Pierre, to be part of the protest. But like Bree said, there's about 5 different things going on Saturday at 10 a.m. It's a busy weekend, guys.
It is a busy weekend. Also, the ACLU is hosting an Equality Day next Tuesday, the 2nd. They'll have a virtual event, and so you should check out their page on Facebook and learn more about that and how you can participate in that. And I don't have any more details on that other than I said I was interested and I'm going to look it up more. I know I will be on the road during that, so I'm not sure how I'll be able to participate other than letting people know about it. We have how many more weeks left of the legislative session?
We only have sort of 2 weeks of regular session, and then veto day is towards the end of March. What's going to be interesting, though, about this legislative session is if the articles of impeachment go through and there's essentially an impeachment trial, our legislators are going to get to do a lot of extra work, because impeachment proceedings can happen outside of regular session, and they essentially don't count against the 40 days that session is mandated for in the state constitution. So between the impeachment trial and then, of course, whatever special session is going to have to get called in the fall to deal with the census data and redistricting, this group of legislators, for being part-time, is really going to be putting in a lot of work.
Oh, so that's the other thing. Tomorrow at noon, is it noon tomorrow? That there's
Democratic Forum has the presentation on redistricting by Drawn Together South Dakota. And if you're not a member of Democratic Forum, I do believe there is a charge for Democratic Forum membership, and I don't know what it is. And it's based out of Sioux Falls. But I know that the Drawn Together SD folks are going to be having webinars with LEAD, and I know we're going to try to get some of the Drawn Together folks onto a later Couch Caucus in March as well. So if you can't make Democratic Forum tomorrow at noon, there will be other opportunities to learn about the redistricting effort in South Dakota.
And you should also, if you're, wanting to figure out how to get involved, you should go to the South Dakota Democrats page and find the list of county contacts so you can get a hold of your county party and find out when they're meeting. If you're in Hughes or Stanley County, we meet on the second Monday of the month at 7, and right now it's virtual. And so that will be March 8th is our next meeting. So you can just message us on our Facebook page, and we'll get you the information to get involved. We really, we want to include more people, get more people involved in this. Also, if you are, regardless of where you are in the state, the other thing you should be thinking about is that there are probably city commission, county commission, and school board positions that are about to be coming up in an election. I know some communities like Lead Deadwood, they'll be voting in April. So shout out to a friend of mine, Kayla Klein, who's running for city commission and Lead. Good luck. And then I also, and so for Hughes or for Pierre, that election for city commission and school board will happen in June. Yep. And so we will hopefully next week, I think we're going to spend some time kind of just reminding people about how you go through that process of like looking up where you need to get, what does the petition process look like in terms of getting signatures to get on a ballot and kind of all those pieces if people are thinking about running. And if you live in our county and in our city, if you live in Pierre and you're thinking about running for office, get a hold of us, please. We really want to have people get as many people out there to run, even if you feel like it's a long shot, just to have, it'd be nice to have the good old boys not feel like they didn't have to put any sweat and labor into it. And they just like it's a done deal and foregone conclusion that they're going to get reelected. And that's what happens when you have an uncontested ballot. So really, we need people to step up. I'm contemplating school board. I'm just going to put that out there to the universe because now I'm going to be accountable for that.
Yep.
I do have a PhD in education, so I am qualified.
Yep.
Maybe more than most people who run for school board. And I have children who are still students in the district. Which is also, I feel like, is important. So anyway, I don't know with that. Do you have anything else you want to say, Amanda?
I will not be running for any local offices. But last week, we did. Bree and I had like a post Couch Caucus talking about running for office. So I second everything that Bree said. And yeah, if folks are interested in running, like we will help you run. We'll make it happen as far as getting you out there. So I think that's all. I went through my notes and we covered all the things that we wanted to rant about. We got all the information out there on upcoming events that we wanted to get out there. Keep an eye on our Facebook page. We also have Twitter. You can follow us there. And yeah, send us a message. Stay connected, and we'll see you on the other side of Crossover Day next week, again on Thursday at 8 p.m. As we'll sign off as Bree's enjoying her
Girl Scout cookies.
Yeah, if you need Girl Scout cookies, we know Girl Scouts. We'll hook you guys up. So yeah, all right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.